If people do rock up and start watching, I can, kind of rewind a little bit and just kind of go over my process for how I've kind of gotten to this point, right? Because what I'm going to be working on today is I'm just going to continue this portrait that I've been kind of tinkering with over the last couple of weeks. So this is, William Dafoe. I'm just kind of trying to practice my likeness sculpts. This was something that was started in one of my classes at CDW, and I'm just gonna keep tinkering with it. I'm seeing like the viewer icon kind of going up, so I guess that means that people are watching. I've never done one of these Twitch streams before, so yeah, I don't quite know everything that's going on behind the scenes. So cool. I guess I'll answer questions as they maybe come in, and I'll talk about how we got here, because it's kind of starting from somewhere. What I am going to do though, for anyone that's interested, is I've got my PureF over here, right? So if you guys have not used PureF before, it's a pretty cool little program. I've got it set to always on top. Typically working with like a 2 monitor setup, right? So I've got my monitor over there, and usually I'll fill that full of my references. But when I'm doing these sorts of like likeness sculpts, what I like to be able to do is just rather than turning my head to look at reference, right? If I just set references up in my top corner there, then I'm just kind of flicking my eyes from my model to my reference. And that I find is a little bit easier when trying to get things to look correct and measure things out. So I've got a couple of I guess I'll just kind of talk about what I'm thinking about as I start to get into this. I've collected a whole bunch of references, right? The main thing I'm kind of looking for is multiple angles, specifically good front and sides, a couple of 3/4, just so I can figure out proportions and shape, right? So one of the things I was pretty lucky to find was this really good front view, right? And it's a very like a high field of view or focal length or whatever that is kind of really sort of flattening his image or his face. So more or less I can kind of get close to that by turning off my dynamic perspective, or I've got a feeling, right, looking at this, that it's probably, if I was to come up to draw and turn up my focal length to something quite high, like 120, that I'm going to start kind of matching that a little bit. So if I'm going to work off of this image, it's not a terrible idea to kind of match it. And in terms of like lining up proportions and stuff, that can help. So where I left off on this last time, right, as I mentioned, I did this for I was doing this as part of a class. What I typically do is kind of coming back into it. I guess what I'm going to do is just go back through and reevaluate what I've done. I'm just grabbing my clay brush, and I'm going to add a bit of a focal shift to it. I like the sort of texture that gives me, and I'm kind of going to scan around his face and just try and figure out what is and isn't working. One thing I could do, and I have done with this guy, right, is I could set my image as a background, right, if I want to just double check like proportions. So grab my PureF, I might just scale that up a little, set that mode to be always on bottom, and then change my see-through, and I can kind of just double check and see how this is looking in terms of where the landmarks are sitting. And I'm not crazy bothered about having it be 100% one-to-one right now. But if I can get this to be relatively close, that would be kind of cool. So I guess I'm lining up the eyes. What I might do is once I kind of get something that feels pretty close, right? I might just come over and store that image in case I ever need to try and do this again. What I'll do is I'll drop my geometry back down to a lower subdivision level and just quickly kind of change where some of these features are sitting. So I'm noticing that maybe my eyelid is not quite in the right spot. So this is very handy, right? If you're lucky enough to find a reference. This is made matching my likeness a little bit easier. But we're not always going to get this lucky, in which case it's about observation, right? This has just allowed me a bit of a shortcut. Might just quickly turn off the hair as I just try and see if I'm getting, you know, some of these things in the right place. So with these likenesses, right, I find that every time I is this not recording?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you? Okay. Do we just put that and be right back?
Yeah. Thanks.
So if I click on that,
You just
okay,
click on the,
cool.
yeah.
All right. Sorry, just the title was showing up wrong, so we're just fixing that. Yeah. So every time when I'm working on a likeness, right, and I come back after, because I haven't looked at this for over a little over a week now. It's good just to reevaluate what I'm seeing, right? Because your brain is very good at kind of storing and assuming it knows what it sees, right? So as you start to sculpt and your eyes get kind of comfortable or used to looking at the same thing over and over again, I find that you, at least for me, stop being able to see what is wrong, right? Everything starts to become sort of it just becomes hard to evaluate. It's one of those things where, like, I'm sure, you know, artists, right, have experienced this where you're working on something for a couple of hours and you look at it and you're like, you know, oh, greatest thing I've ever done, and then you come back the next morning and you're kind of horrified at what you've got and what you thought you had done, right? It suddenly no longer is as perfect as you thought it was the night before, and I think that's just because your brain gets comfortable and familiar looking at your work. So it's good to take breaks, and then I guess what I'm trying to get at is that now that I haven't looked at this for a while, I'm kind of able to reevaluate it from a new perspective. And what I want to do is just kind of do a bit of a sanity check, right? Make sure that everything is where it should be. So yeah, I am lucky in this case that I'm able to kind of match up such a good reference, whereas typically what you'd have to do is just measure everything out, based on where our landmarks are. One thing I do have to be careful of, though, is becoming too familiar with this one angle, right? I should double check in a second that everything is lining up from other perspectives and that I'm not distorting things too much. I'm quite keen at trying to get this to be as accurate as I potentially can. So I'm going to match things this way as much as I can, just now that I'm starting from the beginning, and then I'll work on this more from just observation. I've got multiple angles like in my references to double check on how this is going. How many hours? So this, I started off as, what I'll do is I'll run through kind of where I'm at up to now, right? Or like the process that this has kind of gone through. Might just adjust that eyelid, and then I think everything is pretty close to where I want it to be for where I'm going to start. Nothing is screaming out too much. Those lips might be a little bit thin down there. All right. Like I said, I don't want to do this too much. I'm trying to practice a little bit my observation with this sculpt. Let's just quickly save this off, right? And I'll quickly run through how this has progressed. So this was a class exercise, right? Trying to show students how to do a likeness. So this started off as a base head, right? So I've got this base head here, and this base head I got from Flip Normals, right? So because I'm doing a likeness, one thing I didn't want my students to do, right, is a couple of weeks previous to this exercise, we started with a sphere and we went over construction of a head, right? And sculpt up something generic. What can be difficult, especially for new students, sculpting a likeness, is if we start from a sphere, right? Students get too soon to like from that sphere, they're trying to sculpt the perfect likeness straight out of the sphere, and I think they tend to make more mistakes. So what I would typically do, and what I got my students to do, is work from this base mesh. If I was doing this completely from scratch, like from a sphere, I would still sculpt a generic base head and then make the likeness from that base head. So not trying to create the likeness from scratch, because I think you just end up making too many mistakes. The benefit of starting from a starting point like this, where everything is kind of proportionally correct, is that then all you've got to start doing is moving the features, right? Like where the nose sits, where the eyes sit, and the ears, like those main landmarks, into the position, and then kind of fill in the other gaps with the unique features. I think you're more likely to get a better result with that. So our first lesson, right, starting from this base sphere. Another thing that's really cool about starting from like a really good base sphere like this, rather than from Dynamesh, is that this base head, right, has good topology, right? ZBrush, you get really good sculpting out of nice, evenly spaced edge loops, especially edge loops that are like set up for like mouths and eyes, right? They will deform better. So that's already kind of set up for that. And it's also got UVs already set up. So if I ever want to do any sort of like further pore detailing, it's already capable of that. So that's more or less why we started with this base head. So a lesson here is typically 2 to 3 hours, right? Depending on what sort of like review we've got to do. So I think more or less we had 2 hours. So if we open it up, right, in the first few sort of like, I don't know, I can't remember how long this took, but what I'm trying to do at first, right, is just kind of move my features and just try and capture that sort of essence, right? So this is probably the first like 40 minutes, right, where I'm just kind of moving some of the features, getting some of that brow and the cheek shape. Then, you know, as we go on, one thing that I like to do is try and put in some hair, because especially for someone that's got quite a lot of hair like William Dafoe, that I find helps set, you know, the proportion. So I've got that in just so I can work with it. And then it's just a continual refinement. So you can see just from even there and there, right? It's making maybe that forehead bigger, right? Just gradually moving out all those features. As you can see, just once again, right? Little refinement. So what I'm looking for here is kind of that sort of essence where if I showed someone to this, even though it doesn't quite look 100% like him, right? It's got the essence that someone, I think, hopefully can look at it and be like, oh, you're trying to do William Dafoe. And if I can get that essence, I kind of feel like I'm on the right track. And then it's just a continual refinement where, you know, things are just getting progressively more in line. 5, you're going to start to see that what I've done here, right, as well, is up until this point, I've been working with symmetry turned on so that my cursor, right, is mirrored on both sides. And I'm doing that based on, so what I'm looking at the moment is kind of just one side of the face. I'm not worrying about the other side because I am working with symmetry. I don't want to be looking at one side and then looking at the other side of the face and kind of confusing what I'm doing. So I am only focusing on one side of the face. Once I get to a point where I feel like everything is kind of getting into the correct spot and there's not a lot more I can do without going into asymmetry, that's when I will break it. So you can see here I've turned off symmetry and I'm now able to get, like, no face is perfectly symmetrical. The more symmetrical a face is kind of the more traditional, beautiful we think of people, but like no face is perfectly symmetrical. So in order to get like a really good likeness, right, we've definitely got to break symmetry. So that's what's happening here, is I've broken that symmetry and I'm starting to push those unique features that are appearing on the other side of the face. And then what it is, right, is it's just a continual refinement. So, you know, from there, it's just refining the shapes. You can see I've moved, you know, some of those features in a little bit more. Was that 7? I think that was 7. Okay, no, we've got 7 where now I'm starting to look more into things like, you know, actual details, right? And then what we started with here, where I've done just a quick refinement once again, right? Just in terms of our proportions. So I think, right, I haven't been doing this like super fast. I'm really trying to get this as accurate as I can. So I think this is about maybe like 6 hours, right? On and off, right? That first lesson was like a solid 2 hours. And then since then, it's just been like 30 to 40 minutes a week when I've been able to find some time to work on it. So yeah, that's where I am now. I'm going to, now that I've kind of done a quick refinement of some of those proportions, I'm going to come back and just keep going. So I've got it set up to work from this angle. So what I'm just going to quickly do is another pass, right, where what I'm kind of doing is scanning the face, looking for details that I've maybe not seen previously. Another thing we can do is try and get the lighting on my face here to match my my reference. So I'm just gonna, let's just move that right up here, and I'm gonna, so this is my default light, and I've got this light here that's set up to kind of have my light moved around. So see if I can just get those shadows to vaguely match, right? It looks like it's kind of a bit of a forward top down sort of thing. All right, and then coming in, right, taking a look at the chin, just come in, just refine that ever so slightly. So I'm looking for just like the very minor changes in his face, right? So he's got this sort of like line there, and what I want to try and do is add detail as like my landmark of where things will sit with that, right? Or from there. So that's what I'll do, is I'll probably just do another kind of pass from this angle, trying to analyze what I'm seeing here. And then what I've definitely got to make sure I'm not doing is relying too much on this view. So I've got a bunch of side profile images. Grab my move brush and I might just do you know, I'm really into faces just as a general thing, right? They're complex, but like once you kind of break them down into the rules, like if you were just to read the theory of what a face is, right? Like, you know, it seems simple, but there's that, like, everyone's so different that, and it can be really easy to make something look creepy, right? If you don't get it right. So I really enjoy doing faces. I really enjoy arms as well. As for like things I don't like the back, right? The back is surprisingly complicated in terms of like getting the forms to look natural, right? And you know, the kind of the yeah, the side of the body is also relatively complex. Arms are complex as well, but in a very like aesthetically fun and pleasing way. So I've got like my focal shift turned up, and that's just kind of leaving a bit of a kind of a hard edge. And when trying to do like natural skin, I really like the sort of impression it leaves. I'm probably being a little bit too fiddly at the moment. I do classes all the time. I've never done a Twitch stream, so I'm kind of aware that I've got, you know, potentially other sort of artists watching. So there's a slight bit of anxiety. So I'll just have to get into the groove of this. And kind of just shut my brain off, and I reckon it'll be alright. Alright, so what I wanted to do was come in. It's like a slight faceting to this part of the face here. And this is where like having that reference right there is really handy, right? Is that I don't have to store too much in memory. Like if I was trying to look from one side of the screen to my, you know, left-hand side, I don't have to take my eyes off of my sculpt as I do this. And I think that will help me get a bit more accuracy, right? Or hopefully that will. What I might do is might come in, and one thing that I've done up here is I've started to do some of this eye detail that I'm really enjoying, but I've not really touched it on the other side here. So I'm gonna grab my Form Soft brush, and I'm gonna try and just add in a little bit of my shapes. Now, I'm relatively kind of confident with this sculpt, right? Like I've spent enough time where it's kind of close to being finished in a way, right? Like in terms of all the major shapes that make him look like him are kind of there. So I think the idea is I'm going to be doing one of these every week now, Twitch stream. So next week, like I wasn't quite prepared for this week, so I didn't have something new to work on. It's why I've just picked this up, just so I can finish it, because I want to finish it. It can be hard to find the time to finish this stuff sometimes, so it's a good opportunity to finish this off. But next week I'll start on something new, and I'm going to be working from a concept that Ned, if you guys are, I don't know who's familiar with you know, CDW, Ned's one of the concept guys here, and he's drawn up a new concept for something that one of the instructors has requested that we have, right? So I'll start working on that next week. So we are kind of just jumping in from something that's pretty close to being kind of to done here, or at least to a point that I'm happy with. Now I reckon, so I've got my eyeball there, right? I've got my eye shape. So what I want to make sure I'm doing is just defining where the eye bag's gonna sit. So I like to turn the Damon standard down sometimes, because I find that that gives a that softer sort of sculpt into the geometry, especially for kind of just carving out the features I want. It's not so harsh. I find that when I'm plotting out landmarks, that's quite handy. Another thing I can do, right, if I want to try and get this, is like, it might be a good idea to not just do that, but like increase the size, so I'm no longer focusing on anything but the eye. That way I can start to, you know, maybe I will turn that up a little bit more. So by default it's 2033. I'm on a Cintiq at the moment, so I really like the Cintiqs, right? But I don't think, like, if you're wondering should you get a Cintiq, my answer is that, like, they're not really necessary. The standard Wacoms are more than enough, and the problem I've actually run into is, now I've gotten so used to working with the Cintiq, is I struggle to not sculpt on the Cintiq, where if I end up at a studio or somewhere where the Cintiq isn't available for me to use, I feel less confident in my abilities, right? So sometimes we go and do, you know, conventions, right? And because the Cintiqs are quite big and heavy, they sometimes get left behind, and if I have to do a demo, it's being done on a standard Wacom, and I always feel uncomfortable with it. So, you know, the problem with the Cintiqs is that they're quite expensive for more or less like something that it's kind of overall not super necessary. But, you know, I like them now that I'm super familiar with it. So, I haven't used, well, actually, I did have a non-Wacom for a while, but I can't remember what the brand of it was. It was pretty alright. The only problem I had with it was that its drivers would kind of screw up constantly. but the plus was that it was super cheap, right? Like it was a Christmas gift. I got it when I was like 23 or something. So as a Christmas gift, right? Like definitely didn't break the bank of my parents that bought it for me. So that was a benefit. But I know there's a couple of alternatives to the Wacoms now, and I think generally, from what I've heard, a lot of them are good, right? I haven't used an XP pen, but I as long as the sensitivity is, you know, of a similar quality, I'm sure it's fine. So he's got... What can be difficult when doing stuff like this, right, is just trying to filter out all the noise, right, that I'm seeing. So what I'm trying to do is just kind of landmark where I want some of these details to kind of sit. What I think I should do is let's drop my drawer back to like 50. Let's just make sure that I'm getting enough information from other angles. So I want to make sure that I'm happy with, you know, the shape of his nose and things like that, right? So now one thing I've got to be careful of in this, he's raising his brows up, right, which is what's creating a bit of the discrepancy there. But I reckon the nose shape here might be off. What I'm also looking for are just like hints of shadow, right? For where, you know, stuff like that should go. Looking at this here, I reckon that there seems a little bit weird to me, so let's just pull that out a little bit. There's this different expression, and he's got his head down, which is going to change his, you know, wrinkle, so that's okay. But what I'm also going to take a look at, right, is his ear. Because his ear is quite unique, right? Like everyone's ear is unique, and I haven't spent any time on this side of the face yet, so let's grab our standard brush, right? Let's take a look at just adjusting some of this here. Might move it down in resolution, so that's another benefit of doing this from that base mesh, is the ability to quickly jump around. I want to do that. Resolution. Moving to a lower res, right? Very handy when it comes to moving my kind of geometry. It's easier to move lower resolution geometry. So being able to drop that down is helpful. And because I want to get this likeness quite accurate, right, I am paying attention to these little differences in, you know, his ear, right? I'm trying to really practice my observation. I like to use a lot of move brush for this sort of stuff. Control, I quite enjoy. So, you know what, let's just kind of block out what I think I'm seeing in here. Grab my mask lasso because I want to make sure I can move. The layer tab isn't like it. The problem with working with layers in ZBrush is not that it's hard or anything. It's just that can be a little bit like I find that especially as you get more layers, ZBrush starts to be a little kind of laggy. If I'm doing, and we'll probably jump into some high frequency details in this sculpt here today, because I will do that on layers. They're useful for controlling like the intensity or just like as a way to like remove details that you've added but don't like. But they are potentially just kind of annoying more than anything, right? The way that they work and how kind of slow they can be at times. So let's just continue to try and find. So kind of inadvertently moving shapes here that I don't want to move with my Stamen standard. So masking that off, because what I want to do is I want to just carve in there a little bit and try and, I might grab my standard brush, just push that out. Let's come in and try and connect up that volume. So with this sort of stuff, if I can just kind of turn my brain off, right, and not think so much with like my critical part of my brain, but more just like my like I'm just trying to see, like, because I've got all my proportions and all that is working at this stage. So all I'm trying to do now is just see what needs to be moved where. And if I can shut my brain off, I find that's easier. So if I'm not super talkative, it's just because I'm at that sort of point where I'm trying to just sculpt what I see. Try to add a bit of roundness to that. Cool, you know. And I also like to just jump around a lot. So if I start to get frustrated or bored with one specific spot, go and work on something else. Okay, let's see if I can find something from a side view that's a little bit more neutral, right? Let's see if I can. He's got a slight smile on this side of the face. So that's one thing that I've got to try and be aware of, right? His lips are a little bit more, so also his face is a little bit more like that, but because his cheeks are going back like that, right, it makes it a little bit hard, because that contradicts what I had earlier. So something like this, right, might be a little bit better, because I can see these exact same volumes that I'm seeing in my earlier picture. Another thing just to be aware of is it's like different ages, right? Where is some of these things are starting to get probably a little bit kind of starting to be a little bit more loose than they were when he was younger, because he's quite a couple of years younger in this one. Alright, so what I probably want to do is might just try and get these lips, and then what I might do is I might just kind of start thinking about adding some like pore detail, or like maybe not pores, but more like things that are really unique, like the sort of wrinkles he has, or lips and stuff like that. I think nothing that's like for like not just like for me as well, because it's not, I'm not like a crazy expert at this stuff. This is something that I'm kind of more recently getting interested in, right? With trying to do likenesses and stuff, is just a constant sort of evaluation. Every time I come in, I notice something new, right? So I'm seeing something here that I wasn't getting in my other reference. Just in there. It's this split in the cheek there. So mask the eyelid so I can try and push this around there. Oh, there we go. For some reason the mouse stopped working. So let's take another look at this part of the face here. I think what I've really got to try and do is capture that like really loose skin there. So if I can get a little bit of this, it's just going to help add to that kind of natural, like, kind of, you know, roughness that he's got. He's got a lot of, like, a lot of imperfections in the chin there. And I just want as much of that as I can get before I put any of my pores on there. And I'll run through, I think, today, just because I run the risk of over polishing this guy a little bit if I don't kind of step forward. With my whole thing, so I'm gonna come back. Take a look at this one here. This has got a lot of information on it, including, you know, maybe an indication that I need to add a bit more volume in here. I reckon maybe what I want to do is try and define those brows a little bit more. Alright, I'm gonna grab my standard brush, stroke. Do you know what resolution? I'm on 200. Do you know what? That's okay for the moment because I'm able to get a fair bit happening there. Let's see, is there anything else that's super necessary to get at this angle? No, I reckon what I'm going to do, right? Let's come back quickly to my front view that I was working with earlier, which is here. Let's try and I reckon I might, what I reckon I'm going to do now, right? So I might just get one or two little extra things. In these eyes here. So we've got like, how long? I mean, depends on how much time you want to put into it, right? So the actual, like, one of the cool things about modern ZBrush is a lot of the technical stuff that you kind of really need to know doesn't exist until later. Right, so knowing topology and how that affects your model, you can skip that for a while because you can just play with Dynamesh. So Dynamesh is the way that ZBrush handles, or it gives us the ability to redistribute polygons kind of on your model. So otherwise, like the basics, right? I don't know, a couple of months. Like it's just, it comes down to practice, right? The more you practice, the better and quicker you will get. Heads, right, are a very good study, right? If you can start to learn to sculpt heads, and just start doing them, right? Like even simple blockouts, right? So geez, I'm not sure. Let's see what this one is. Even like just rushing, right? Spending 15 minutes and doing something like that, right? Which is quite simple. But like if you can start to do stuff like that without much hassle, right? You can do block out in 15 minutes. That's a really good exercise that will start to get you kind of on the right path, because what you're doing there is you're learning the basics of navigating ZBrush, how Dynamesh works, and then one thing that's I think makes ZBrush tricky is it's that combination of the technical with the artistic, right? So you've got to learn proportions and shape, and a simple exercise like that will help. So I try, and I need to do more, to be honest. Do a couple of things like that, right? Just quick, simple head blockouts. Try and do them quite often because they're really good exercises. So, what I think I'll do is because I'm kind of at the point where I'm just sort of like fiddling about. So let's actually kind of take a risk, right? And let's do this. I am going to quickly open up Maya, right? Because what I've got that I'm going to use is I've got where do I put them? My portrait, X normal. All right, so I've got these right that have come from texturing X, Y, and Z. So it's like a scan of a face, right? And it's got displacement detail for pores. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's open up Photoshop. Because I just want to, oh, actually I can probably just do it here, right? Properties, details, what is it? 8,800 by 529. So let's, in Maya, go create plane, and let's width, was it 8,800? By 5298. So what I've done, right, oh, that might just be a little bit big, so scale it down, but that plane is now proportionally the same size as that image. Let's just call that image plane. Let's bring this into ZBrush. So we'll go import head. No, that's not it. Portrait, wonderful, image plane. I'm also going to come up to texture, import, and under there. Let's grab just that image, right? We're gonna have to flip it because of ZBrush's weird thing. Where's most recent William? There he is. Subtool append, and let's append the image plane. All right. Let's go texture. Apply that. So we've got to scale this down quite a lot. And what I'm going to do is line this image plane up with his face, right? So let's just turn it off that, turn on transparency, turn off ghost so I can see it, and just roughly line up my features. Roughly, let's just save this as a new version in case I need to redo this. ZWrap. Okay. On this plane geometry, right? I'm going to go to geometry, turn off smooth, and let's just divide it a few times. To about like that, right? Just so we've got enough points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this plugin. For that to work, this plane needs to be on the top layer and William Dafoe underneath. And let's go Z plugin, ZWrap, start ZWrap. Now this can take a few minutes. All right, what we'll do, right, is let's, what we're going to do is we're going to place landmarks, right, on my plane and match them up with my face. So, you know, if I put one there on the lip, find the kind of equivalent on my model. Like that, you know, on the nose. Now this won't give us like a perfect result, but it gives us something to start with, which I like. And what's cool is because this has like the UVs on William Dafoe at the moment are the same as that base head, that if I set this up right, theoretically I can skip the step if I use this base head in the future because the UVs will match up and I can just bring it in. It'll be quite a quick little thing. Let's put that there, put that there. Roughly, you know, eyebrows there. All right, the most important thing is going to be the ears, right? The ears kind of screw up quite a lot. So you put the chin there, chin there. So we need a fair few points on our ears. Although I find that the ears generally like screw up enough that I end up doing it from scratch anyway. Okay. Just roughly. So the ear tends to screw up anyway, so I'm not too bothered if it's perfect. Now the ZWrap process can take a few minutes, so I'm just going to put this on be right back as this works. So we'll go down to wrapping and we're going to hit, actually let's go back, right? How do I go back? Is that it? Let's just quickly save that in case I need to redo it. Oh. Because I'm going to use X normal later, so I'm just going to call it that. Let's call that plane. Let's call that one. We'll just call that one head, just in case I need to start again, because it can be kind of annoying doing those points. So we'll hit start wrapping, and what it's going to do, it's going to use those points. It's going to try and wrap this plane around our head. And then what we can do is we can project that plane, the image on that plane, onto our model and bake it onto our UVs, and then use that to apply a bunch of like details onto our model. So it might take a few minutes, so I'm just going to go and be right back, and we'll come back and see what we're going to do next. Okay, so it's nearly done. So as you can see, right, what it's doing is it's gradually placing that image plane based on those points over the points on the mesh. So we'll see that kind of jump soon. So it's a really cool technique. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where if you do it, you just got to now wait for the computer to kind of perform its business. But yeah, because this has those default UVs, once it's done, it will be, I could use this again and again. The reason why I'm doing this now is that I think in order to kind of do what I want to do next, I need to up my resolution, right? Because I want to start adding in more of those little details. So what I'm going to do is I will subdivide my model and get it to about 30 million polygons or something. But I find that getting a little bit of this kind of small or some of this high frequency detail can help me kind of, I don't know, I like it. And then I can sculpt over it, right? Like I'm not done sculpting because I can just create a new layer and keep sculpting. But I'll have some of that poor detail there to inform what I'm doing. And also just so that I'm showing you guys maybe something you haven't seen before. But it should be done soon. So I apologize for the fact that we just have to watch. Fortunately, there's another step after this in which we'll have to wait for the computer again, which is baking it in XNormal. But that won't take so long to do. If anyone has any questions, I guess now would probably be not a bad time to ask, just because I'm available to actually see what people are saying. All right, so that is still wrapping. So what we might do is just while that goes, I might just quickly throw that over here, and we'll keep an eye on that. And while we're waiting for that, let's just kind of take a look at something else. All right, so this is something that I'm working on for a class at the moment. And as soon as that finishes wrapping, right, we'll jump back to it. It's unfortunate that what I might have done right is probably maybe subdivided it one too many times, because it's matching like all the subdivision points, and I probably should have done it a little bit lower just to get it out quicker. It will be more accurate. It's just it's taken the time. We can see that like it looks like it's more or less finished. But yeah, still just got a few little things left to do. Might just jump at the last second, right, to complete. But yeah, we'll figure that out once that's ready. All right, so this is something that I'm working on with students. So just so that we're not looking at a blank screen. Just gonna continue to work on this. So what I'm going to do, right, is like this is a combination of things I'm building in Maya and things that I'm starting to build in ZBrush. So what I was working on was this sort of chess piece here. What I might do is just re-import my torso. All right, and I'll grab this, right? So what I've got to quickly do, yeah, so I'm just gonna duplicate that over. Probably don't need this to be as long as that. So let's maybe delete that here. What am I doing? Here's my connect. Let's just, yeah, I reckon I did it one too many because it's just right at the end point there. Really apologize for that. It's makes it not such an interesting stream. It's okay. There we go. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Like it just that last like quarter just suddenly completed. So if we actually, you know what, let's jump back into ZBrush. So if we, once this is finished, right, what we'll see if I can find my pen. I put my pen down as I was waiting. There it is. So if we take a look at this guy, right, turn off that. Oh, do you know what? Something is not looking correct here. Yeah, something funky's happened here. All right. Yeah, it's like it's yeah, if somehow I ended up with 2 planes in there, I don't know how that happened. All right, so that's all right. That's the one I want. Okay, so let's just turn that one off. I must have duplicated that at some stage. It's all right. So you can see, right, like it's wrapped that face into his shape, and relatively things are lining up. The lips, not so much, because his lips are quite big. What I can do here is I haven't gotten a great projection on the ear, but that's okay. Let's save this right quickly. I'm gonna delete that. I have no idea where that came from. Let's export this out. Let's just call that, you know what? Let's just call that plain. And let's export out a lower resolution head. So maybe like level resolution 2. Okay. Let's open up X normal now. And we'll project that plane onto our model. So come over here. This won't take as long, luckily. So add our mesh, add our plane is the high poly mesh, and in here bake mesh texture, or bake texture to bake, right? Let's find that displacement map, right? Load in our low poly, which is the William Dafoe head that I just exported. And it's got UVs, right? If you come down here, set to bake base texture. I'm gonna do it at 8K because I want it to be quite high res. And then let's quickly save it here as a PNG, and we'll generate the map. And what it's gonna do, right, is it's gonna project that plane onto our UVs. And then we'll go into Photoshop quickly, and we will separate our channels, because if we come and take a look, right, at this texture that I've gotten from Texture XYZ, it's got 3 channels baked into it, right? So we've got red, green, and blue, and what we've got is like high frequency details in the displacement, medium, and then like micro. And what I want is I'm gonna want this red and this green channel. So you can see what's happening, right, is there are UVs for William Dafoe. We're gonna have a lot of errors, but that's okay. It's gonna give us a base, especially on the that front portion, right? And then what we can do is we can fill in the rest just with kind of just generic textures, generic alphas. You can see this is not going to take too long. But once it's baked, what I'm going to want to do is just quickly jump into Photoshop and just separate, because this is baking those 3 channels into one texture. And I want to separate my green and my red channel into individual textures to use. And you can do that with the albedo map as well. And if you then want a texture, we've got like a base texture that we can start with. And I've used that a lot in my textures for faces before, right? It just helps to give a bit of extra like value. Well, that's what I like to. I don't like to use it completely. I like to just kind of blend it in. Nearly done. Doesn't take too long. So you can see in the air is, right, it kind of didn't really work too well, but that's cool. I find that the is often, you have to kind of do them. But the good thing about that though is that like ear, pore, right, it's pretty like, they're pretty easy just to quickly do yourself, so. Come on, it's just saving it out now. Shouldn't take much longer. Come on. All right, there we go. Just all right, cool. All right, so open it up. So we've got a red channel, Control A, Control C, and you can see, right, it's got all that displacement detail there. Let's place that there, and let's just save that out. And let's save it as a PNG, and let's just call that like red.png, so I know that it's the red channel. Actually, one thing I think I might have accidentally done is make sure we Control Shift paste, because it wasn't actually pasted exactly in the right spot. Okay, let's grab our green channel. I'm not going to bother with the blue. Although I have used the blue in the past for for the micro normals, but for what we're doing today, it's just going to be quicker just to ignore it. Come on, green. All right, let's jump back into ZBrush. Let's just quickly, let's delete that. Don't need him anymore. No, not that. Cancel. I want to make sure I'm deleting that, not the model. All right, let's send him back to his top level, and then I'm going to divide him by 1. All right, which is going to give it, oh, actually, I can probably go a little bit higher than that. Let's go to like 30 million. 40 million, that should be all right. I mean, that's a lot. Okay, I'm going to quickly, before I do anything, come back to my subdivision 1. Come over to my morph target. Store that morph target as it is. Right, and let's start with our red displacement, right? So come over, import, William Perfects, normal, grab the red. And what we need to do is also flip that in V. In order to actually see our displacement map displayed, right, we have to have a texture applied. Cool, let's create a layer, right? Let's call that layer red. Let's come over to our displacement map. So deformation, that's not it, sorry. Where are we? Displacement map. Load in that red channel. And I'm going to set that to like 0.2 intensity. And you can see, right, how it's doing that. Let's maybe set it a little bit lower to like 0.1. There we go. And let's hit apply displacement map. What's going to happen, right? Actually, let's maybe a little bit lower, 0.02. There we go. That's all right. Let's try that. Apply. Cool. So unfortunately, right, you can see that. You see how it's like created that huge, like it's inflated that, right? Which is kind of shitty. So go down to level 1 and then go to our morph target, and we're just going to switch it back, right? And that's going to help put things so it's not so displaced. But unfortunately, it looks like it's not done it as efficiently on this model. Let's try this out. In the past, I've had that work a little bit better. Let's try it out. Let's just see. Oh, I know exactly why that's happened. Okay, so actually, do you know what? Let's delete that layer. And let's do this, right? Typically, what I like to do is actually just put a mid-gray value, right? So like 127, 127, 127, 27 in the background. So I forgot to do that. Let's try that again. Let's resave out those channels. Alright, let's try that again. Come back to ZBrush. Let's make sure, right, that at level morph target, make sure that's definitely stored. Let's go back up. Let's reload that red channel. Flip V. Layers. Displacement map. All right, let's apply that again. Geometry. Morph target. Switch. There we go. So it's not as inflated there now, right? So that gray at 1.7, like mid value for gray. So without it, it was just overinflating it. Now what I need to do to clean this up, right, is quickly turn this off. And actually, let's just quickly do the green channel. We can do this all at once, right? So once again, just quickly, geometry. I like to mix the red and green channels together. Morph target, delete, store. Geometry up to full level. Layers. New. Green. Cool. All right, apply that as well. So that's like mid-value detail. Morph target. To switch it back, right? See, without that, right, changing it back, it just everything ends up a little bit inflated, which will just kind of throw off my sculpt. So fixing that helps. All right, and then what I'm going to do, right, is turn off that layer. And with it turned off, right, at our current resolution, let's go morph target store. Right, turn our red channel back on. And I can just go through with my morph brush, right? And we can just like, let's clean up these areas that didn't really work. Right, so that's just morphing it back to what it saw a second ago. But you can see, right, like there's a few issues with like the lips, because his lips were quite unique in size compared to like the face that I matched it with. But what I have gotten is a lot of just like base pores in the areas that are really important, right? Because it's all in that like very center of the face, or where like the super unique recognizable pores are that change, right? The nose, the forehead, and the cheeks especially. And that just means that I don't have to like try and get that right with manual alphas. They are more or less right, and then I can fill up the rest with more generic sort of details. So what I will do is and you can see that the ear is kind of screwy, but the actual pore detail for an ear is pretty simple. So I probably would just like wipe the ear out, and I'll kind of redo it manually, just because it's a very soft sort of pore. It's not hard to repaint. And I'll match or kind of like blend my green and red channels together. Unfortunately, there, right, there's like hair on this guy here, so that I don't want that. Don't want hair on his forehead. And he's got eyebrows, right? Which what I'll probably do is, if I was, depending on how I decide to finish this, I'll probably like do some X-Gen eyebrows, and so that those displacement for the eyebrows are kind of unnecessary. And I'll just put some like generic, like I'll create some generic sort of pores underneath that. For the moment, I might leave them just as I continue to sculpt. Unfortunately as well, the eyes tend to, with this method, don't work super efficiently, so we'll clean that up as well. There's like eyelashes, but we can fix that up. Potentially some issues with the nose as well, but the nose is another area that isn't too hard to kind of do on its own. And unfortunately the lips haven't worked super well. Not all of them, but he's got very unique lips, so I kind of expected that to happen. It's alright. Cool. Let's make a decision. I'm going to leave the eyebrows there for the moment, I reckon. Let's quickly do that on the green channel, right? And then we'll blend these things together, and then we'll add in some extra kind of details. So I know I'm going to redo the lips. I'm going to redo the nostrils. So like it's a bit of a pain, not pain to set up, but like sitting through waiting for that projection can just be like a real drag, especially if you're trying to like show people what you're planning to do. But the result, right, gives us a lot to work from in the face area. I really like this technique. I think it does a surprisingly kind of a bit of a magic job. Just got to clean up. All this back here will eventually be covered with like hair and stuff, so it's not super important. That's just like projection errors, right? A lot of this I'll have to refix, but it's okay. It's alright. It's giving me something to start with, which is the important thing. Cool. Let's just do that. Alright, so that's probably a little bit too intense at the moment, especially for like inside of ZBrush where we just want it to look nice at the moment. So what's cool about working with these layers, right? So I can drop that down to like 0.6, so like it's 0.6 or 60% of the opacity. And let's take a look at my red channel. Put that to like 0.4 or 5. Feels to me like I feel like I might have a slight discrepancy here. It's possible that when I pasted my green channel that I forgot to control Shift V, because it feels to me like things might just be slightly off. Or it's just my imagination. I'm not sure. In any case, I can always redo that if I've screwed it up. But that gives me somewhere to start with, right? And I can continue to sculpt on this now, right? I've got to work with layers now, but that's okay. So let's grab my Damon standard. I might just come in and work on doing some extra wrinkles. Let's take a look at his lips, right? So actually, yeah, let's just call this lips. And there was one here, right, that was giving me some nice sort of that mixed with the other one, the lip detail. That one's alright. So let's go in, and I'm gonna probably get some pretty crisp lines here. Might just turn my lazy radius up a bit. Just gonna try my best to kind of match what I'm seeing here. To be too accurate. Just block out. Just grab my form soft and try and give this a bit more volume, right? So what's interesting is that what I'm seeing, at least on this one, he's got a lot of like very. What I might do is I might do that on a separate layer. I might just fill in what I've started to do here, and then because he's got a lot of like, he's got kind of wrinkly lips, so I might do that on a separate layer. Just try and get a little bit of that volume going. Yeah, so like, you know, you can start to get some pore detail in, and then we'll continue to sculpt over it. Yeah, I think that's my time, right? So I'm gonna end that. Next week I'm starting something from scratch, right? This was just because let's just because I wanted to do this more or less. But yeah, next week we're starting something new, something pretty exciting. And I'll keep you guys updated with how this guy's going, because I want to finish him now that I've kind of got him, you know, going. Yeah, I kind of like getting those base pores before I start doing some of these extra wrinkles, because I find that they help inform me put things where they should go. Another thing that's really cool, right, is, let's say, create a layer. Now, I've stopped naming things. I should keep things named. So you can always still, like, drop your resolution, right? And then make changes to, like, the underlying shape here still. I think if one or two of these parts have kind of like gotten inflated. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to log off, I think. Cool. I'll see you again next week if you decide to come and check me out.